Chapter 24. Under Enchantment. "All right," Buck said, sliding the blindfold off Francie's face. She blinked in the sunlight, and once her eyes adjusted, she saw they were standing next to a pile of brush in the middle of the woods. "What am I supposed to be looking at?" Francie asked, when her heart subsided enough to allow her to talk. Buck ceremoniously lifted some dead branches off the brush pile to reveal a log, Francie said. "A really, really big log." Buck patted it proudly. "Are you kidding me?" she said. "This is a joke, right? I mean, you don't blindfold someone and then submit them to beating by boat hardware to show them a dumb log." Buck sighed. "Okay, you're a city girl. We can't expect you to understand this." Francie couldn't believe she'd actually taken him seriously when she could see what a buffoon he was. He and his mouth-breathing sidekick, Bluto. "These are big logs and old logs, and one of these things is worth like $8 per board foot, and there's probably almost 600 board feet in this baby. Multiply that by hundreds of these dumb logs, as you call them, that are under the lake. Dozens, anyway." She said, trying and failing to do the math in her head. "Why? Why are there so many logs under the lake, or why are they so valuable?" "Both." "Okay, back in the old days, this whole area was covered with pines. Big old white pines, this big around." He spread his arms wide. "All this area, for hundreds of miles around, nothing but big old white and red pines. They say a squirrel could run from here to Chicago on the tops of those trees and never touch the ground. They say you could have ridden a bicycle from here to there because the forest was so ancient that there was no underbrush. It must have been amazing." Francie stared at his glowing face. He was really quite articulate when he started talking about this subject, she thought, impressed that he cared so much about the forest. "But then the loggers found them," Buck went on. He had started back down the path, and Francie followed. She didn't bring up the missing blindfold. "They cut down pretty much everything. They loved these trees because they floated. They called it cork pine, in fact. It was easy to transport if there was water. They'd float big rafts of logs and send thousands of them downriver to sawmills to be milled into lumber. There was so much of it, and it was so cheap that some towns had sidewalks made out of it. You know how much of that old-growth forest is left now?" Francie shook her head. "Less than 2%. Buck shoved his hands in his pockets and kicked at the ground. "It's a tapestry. It really is." "Travesty?" Francie suggested. "Yeah," Buck agreed. "So now the big trees are pretty hard to come by, so these logs are really valuable." "If it floats, why did you have to pull this log off the bottom?" "Some of them got waterlogged. They've been down there for over 100 years. "Okay, I get it," Francie said. "The treasure is the logs, then." She was kind of disappointed. What had she expected, she wondered? Gold doubloons? They had come out onto the boat landing when Buck realized the blindfold mistake. "Crap-a-roma," he said. "The blindfold!" Francie shrugged and smiled. "Now I'm going to have to kill you," Buck said. The sidekick, Bluto, let out a guffaw. Francie did not find it funny. Her stomach seized up. "Geez," Buck said. "I'm just kidding. You look like you just swallowed a ghost or something." He had his stepdad's way with words, Francie noticed. "Come on, get in," he said, gesturing to the boat. "I wouldn't kill you here anyway, would I? At a public boat landing?" Francie couldn't tell if he was joking or not, but as it was a really long walk back to her aunt's cabin, if it could even be walked, she climbed into the boat and hoped he was joking. Do you want to ride back to your grandma's place or what? Buck shouted over the motor. No thanks, I've got a kayak on the island. I figured you didn't get there by flying, Buck said. Bluto grunted. Another laugh, Francie assumed. What's that? She asked, pointing to a strange-looking vessel some ways distant down the lake. Geologist, Bluto said. Francie turned to him. Huh? They're taking core samples of minerals. Core samples. Where had she heard someone talking about that before? That's weird, isn't it? She asked. How would they ever get the minerals out from under the lake? What kind of minerals, anyway? Buck and the Hulk shrugged. They're looking all over here, Buck said. On land, too. Wherever they can get to. Supposed to be some kind of, I don't know, copper, I think? Just drop me there, Francie said, pointing to the island. There's still enough daylight to paddle back. Buck pulled up to the beach where they found her. Where's your boat? He asked. Other side. Oh. Now listen, he said. Just because we forgot to blindfold you on the way back doesn't mean we're not serious about keeping this secret. If you know what we mean, Bluto put in. I get it, she said. You better, Buck said darkly. There are others who would like a cut of this action. Sandy, Francie thought, as she stepped out onto land. That's why he didn't like Buck. After Buck pulled away, Francie took a look at the barge through binoculars. It was a strange-looking piece of equipment. She supposed a mining company could afford to build a road if they wanted to. All they probably needed was a permit. What Sandy said came back to her again. Seems like everybody wants something other than forest from this forest.